Make no mistake about this. Make no mistake about this. Narcissism is a very spiritual matter. Narcissism is a very spiritual matter. That is the premise of this post. I want to talk about the black sheep of the family. Black sheep is a word that has come to be coined. It's a phrase that has been coined to define the chosen ones who were born into a narcissistic dynamic. And it is always a chosen one who is born into a narcissistic dynamic. That was the reason for the premise. You will almost never experience narcissism if you're not a chosen one. Because narcissism is a spirit and it is after those who are chosen. For some reason, this narcissistic spirit is able to tell, even before you are born, it is able to tell that you would be different. That's why, even before you get born, usually for a chosen one, there are some things that happen that either prevent you from being born or being conceived in the first place, or after you have been conceived. They do their best to make sure you do not get born into this world. And if you're born into this world, they make sure they do their best to suppress who you're meant to become. When a chosen one is born into a narcissistic dynamic, they do not know they are chosen. You're just like a baby, like every other baby, and innocently you try to get through the world just like the rest. But with time, you're a chosen one listening to me. At some point in time, you realize that you can't get through the motions of the world in the same way as your peers. For some reason, you always appeared to be a target. You always felt like a target of some sort. And usually, this starts all the way back at home. It doesn't start out there, it starts in your family. That's why I have titled this video The Black Sheep of the Family. Black sheep meaning you stand out. Among the white sheep, you stand out. And that is the story of every empath, every chosen one who has been in a narcissistic dynamic. You are always the target. You always stand out, even when you're not trying to. Let's look at two biblical examples. I want to explain the reason why you are a black sheep in this video. And I hope that by the end of this post, you will get a feel for what's coming ahead in your life. Now, like I had said a few minutes earlier, there are attacks even before you're conceived and even before you're born. You look at someone like Joseph, for example, whose father was Jacob, his mother was Rachel in the Bible. So you know the story, but for those who don't know the story, let me just take us back to Sunday school. So this is what happened with Joseph. His father, Jacob, had two wives, Leah and Rachel. But for him to be born, there was kind of a trick that went on between um, the Jacob's father-in-law and the daughters whom he married. So Jacob, who was Joseph's father, was told by Laban that if he wanted Rachel's hand in marriage, this was what was required of him. He was supposed to work for 7 years for her. And then after the 7 years, he was supposed to receive her as a bride. Now the scriptures say that it was a very easy thing for him to do because he loved Rachel very much. Therefore, after 7 years, he approached his father-in-law, presented the agreement. I was to work for you for 7 years. You were to give me Rachel, your daughter, in marriage. But at night, Laban he switched the daughters and put Leah in the instead of Rachel. When finally in the morning, Jacob had woken up, he was amazed to find that the girl that was given to him was actually Leah, not the girl of his dreams, who was Rachel. He was very angry, of course. He said, you know what? This is not the agreement we had. What should I do to make this right? Because this was not the agreement that we had. Then Laban said, okay, you know what? This is my explanation for this. In our culture, we cannot be able to give the last daughter first. The first daughter has to go first. So that's the reason I switched Leah for Rachel. All right. So you're required to work another 7 years. You want Rachel's hand in marriage. Oh, okay. Again, the Bible says it was very easy for him to do because he loved Rachel. He worked another 7 years. So that's a total of 14 years, right? Working for this chick, this lady. Don't be offended by. Oh, man. All right. So he worked for this woman for 14 years. And finally, he got her. But this was the crazy part. This was the crazy part. Leah managed to get very many children, but Rachel was not able to conceive. She was not able to conceive a single child. And that became part of the reason there was a lot of malignment and bullying and mistreatment and mockery from Leah, her sister, because Rachel could not give birth. And it was a very long time. I think, was it another 14 years before, was it another 7 or 14 years before Rachel was finally able to get another child? And so you see what's happening here. Because by the time Rachel got her son, the son was Joseph. So are you seeing what I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to give you a history of the extents that the enemy would go to prevent you first from being conceived, because Rachel was barren. It was by a miraculous happening or occurrence that she was actually finally able to give birth. And this happened up to 14 years after marriage. And at that time, she had waited for 14 years before. He was simply stopping or doing his best to stop Joseph from being born. We know how the story goes. Joseph is born into the world. He thinks he's just a normal kid, shares his dreams with his brothers and his family, thinks his family is a safe space. What do? They attempt to kill him. They change their mind. They sell him into slavery. And even in the slavery, he was just a kid by the way. He was just a kid. He was sold into slavery, about 12 years old or something. So he's sold into slavery. And then what happens next is a series of other narcissists keep attacking him, starting with his wife's boss, or his boss's wife, sorry. And then from there, his partner in prison, the cupbearer who was supposed to be the one who was his way out. And it's a long story, a period of many years, until finally he is born into his purpose and he becomes the Prince of Egypt. Now, you see, in the position that he was in, he saved the whole world. You and I are alive today because of Joseph. Do you know that? Because the world was going extinct if it were not for Joseph's dreams and preparation, because the scripture is very clear. He fed the whole world because there was a worldwide famine, and everyone had to go to Egypt to buy food in order to survive. This was Joseph's ingenious or project. It was his spiritual ingenious that kept the whole world alive and prevented humanity from going extinct. Now you can begin to understand why all along the enemy had been trying all along to stop him from being conceived, then to stop him from being born, and after he was born, trying to stop him from growing up, after he grew up, trying to stop him from coming into his purpose. But nothing can stop a chosen one, and nothing can stop you. Now, the takeaway here, or one important takeaway, is that as a black sheep of the family, you will be abused at home. You will suffer. You will suffer more than any other sibling. You will be the target. You will be the convenient excuse for when people want to show their worst side. And this is a common occurrence. You're not alone. This is actually a very common occurrence among all chosen ones. It's a very common occurrence among them all. But the takeaway I was trying to bring to your attention was that between the time that he discovered his purpose, which was about 10 to 12 years old, and to the time that it was actualized, it was a period of like 18 years. And as a chosen person, you have to go through this kind of training where the world seems to be set out against you. The first training ground being your home. And it's because of your purpose. It's tied to the end that you're supposed to become. And when you're born, it's not like you're more impressive than anyone else. No. Look at David, another chosen one. Was he more impressive than anyone else? No, he was also the last born of Jesse, who preferred his older brothers to him. So the older brothers were sent into the army for military exercises or expeditions. He was sent into the field to shepherd the sheep. Even when the prophet Samuel was sent to Jesse's household to anoint one of his sons as king, he called out all his other sons, but did not even think that David was worthy of being looked upon by the prophet. You hear me? It's actually by spiritual discernment that the prophet was able to tell that there is a son who is not here. Where is he? And Jesse tried to talk him out of it. He's just a shepherd boy, he's just taking care of the sheep. The prophet knew the chosen people, was Samuel himself, who was the prophet talking, was also chosen. And he was 3 years old. You can go read that whole story. And so he knew the chosen ones don't come from special circumstances necessarily. It's not that they are more impressive than anyone. So he said to Jesse, rush and get him here, because we will not sit down until that boy comes here. And when he came, what happened? When he came, God was able to reveal that this was the chosen one to be next in line for the kingdom. And he anointed David king. Now, this is the other issue. From the time that David was anointed to the time that he became king, it was like more than 12 years. So I want you to think about it. This is why you're a black sheep. You have to go through training and serious training, because your purpose in the world is so heavy. You have a very heavy task to fulfill in this world. And the training has to match it. Otherwise, when you get to that point, you will not be able to handle such a position. It's not just failure that can destroy you. Success can also destroy you. You understand what I'm saying? The way you handle failure is the same way you will handle success. There's no difference. There are many people who have been failed by success just as failure or by failure. Keep that in mind. I want to encourage you. If you see these signs that are weird, you are always a target. There are always circumstances around you that are preventing you from achieving your goal, from becoming who you know you're meant to be. If your existence only, just your existence, is such a polarizing matter to those around you, that could be a very big sign that you're a chosen one. There's no other reason. Remember the premise I made when I started this video. There is no other reason why you're being targeted, except that narcissism is a spiritual disorder. It is a wicked spirit which knows who you are, or which has an idea what you will do, and it is doing its best. That's why you're the black sheep of the home. There is no other better place to destroy you than in your home. Because if we manage to destroy you in your home, then I can prevent you from going to the world. Right? I can prevent you from becoming what you're supposed to become in the world. So keep that in mind. Stay strong, stay hard. You're a black sheep because you're a chosen one. And do not mind it. No matter how the circumstances look like, you will fulfill your purpose. Nothing can stop it. Nothing can stop it. And like the brothers of Joseph finally had to sit around the table and watch him eating. It's actually what David was writing in Psalm 23. He was referring to Joseph's story. And he said, when he said to God, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. He was referring to Joseph's story. And the brothers finally had to sit around his table and witness that whatever they meant for evil, God meant for good. Be blessed.